Welcome to the Stoic Bodywork podcast, where we focus on balancing the body, opening the mind, and awakening the spirit. I'm Octavia, your co-host. Just a quick reminder, all the information shared here is for general informational purposes only and isn't intended as professional, medical, or legal advice. And since today's a guest episode, the views and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast or any associated organizations. All right, let's get started.
Welcome to another episode of the Stoic Bodywork podcast. As always, I'm Phil, and waiting in the wings is Octavia, should we need her. But today I am joined by the chief editor of Norse Panda, which is my my publishing company, and the person who makes all of my odd ramblings on written pages better and actually accessible to individuals. Say hi, Cassie.
Hi. Nice to meet you all.
This is your first podcast you've ever done.
It is my first podcast.
And we have a pretty interesting topic, but why don't you go ahead and tell people about yourself a little bit and what brought you on today?
Yeah. So I am the chief editor of Phil's publishing company, but we've known each other for about 6 years. And so when Phil said he was doing these podcasts, I couldn't think of a topic that I'm an expert on, but I could think of a topic that I really didn't know much about, but wanted to learn more. So hopefully today we'll dig in a little bit to meditation. I can learn a little bit more about it and why it's a practice that I should engage in more than I do.
And I mean, look, if I'm being honest, everyone should engage more than they do, but let's start with what you know about meditation and go from there.
Yeah. So I know of meditation as a practice, definitely a connection between the mind and the body. I know that I should meditate because it helps to, I think, from what I've heard, focus you and to help you slow down and really think through the things that are perhaps important to you. I struggle with not overthinking things. I also struggle with letting my mind stop thinking. And so the idea of just breathing and letting thoughts go and acknowledging them, but not thinking on them is really hard for me. And so I just thought learning a little bit more about meditation and the process of meditation would be really helpful.
So the process of meditation is probably the more important thing to note because that's the major difference. Meditation is simply one specific action. And once you do that action, you're meditating, which is where everyone kind of gets a little lost. The other side of that is what we call mindfulness. So why don't you tell me about what you know about mindfulness?
So I would define mindfulness as conscious action. But I think it's a little too buzzwordy right now. I think people use mindfulness perhaps in the appropriate sense that maybe we'll talk about. But there's also like mindful eating and mindful engagement and I think people use mindfulness too much and it kind of strays away from perhaps what it was meant to be. But my understanding of it is the act of being conscious in the decisions that you're making.
Yes. So mindfulness is what you do during meditation in the mental space. Meditation is simply defined as awareness of breath.
Okay.
And anytime you're aware of your breathing, you're taking control of the autonomous and essentially the autonomous nervous system. So we have the parasympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, rest, digest. On the autonomous side, the rest, digest side, our body is typically taking care of our breathing pattern, right? We don't have to think about our heartbeat.
Yep.
We don't have to think about engaging our lungs. We don't have to think about engaging our digestion. We can do things to aid that and we can have some slight control over it. But the only one we really have control over is the breathing. So when the autonomous nervous system kicks in, like I can't tell my heartbeat, like beat, 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 beat. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can do things that make it beat quicker. That's an outside essentially a vagus nervous system response. I'm, doing something that increases the necessity for a heart rate, but the lungs I can take direct control of. That gives you control over the autonomous nervous system, which is the definition of meditation. We'll go into some of the etymology a little bit to kind of get a better understanding of it. Yeah. But does that make sense so far?
It does. It does.
When I say that, what does it make you kind of think about as far as taking control of your breathing? Like, do you have times in your life where you do that regularly? Have you ever done that before?
So, I think the first thing that came to my mind when you said that was, I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense. When you're swimming, you have to control the way in which you're breathing so that you can go at the pace that you want to go, either to go quickly or to ensure that you're able to go for a longer distance. And it's probably a very simplistic answer, but that was the first thing that popped into my mind.
No, I mean, that's a good one where a lot of people have experience having to control their breathing, specifically anyone who's never suffered through a panic attack or anything like that, who would have some sort of engagement with someone who teaches them how to breathe correctly. Mm-hmm. But if I'm being completely honest, the episode could end simply on meditation is just defined by taking control of your breathing. Anything you do after that is a practice, and that's where the world of mindfulness comes in. What are some of the typical meditations you've heard of or have questions on?
I think the only going back to breathing, I think the only thing I've heard of is box breathing. And I've tried that once or twice, but I don't think I actually know how to do it. And then my mom has a friend who, since they were friends since they've been in like second grade. And she started meditating when she was like in high school, and she does it every day. And so I think that was like the most exposure I ever had to the idea of it. But she does it as something to like help center herself and ground herself, as then she goes into her day of chaos of raising twins and everything when she was and working a full-time job when she was doing that as a nurse. But it's just something that she's always done all her life, and it just helped to center her. So that's kind of the only connection or experience I had with it. I do have a friend that teaches breath work, which I find fascinating too.
So that is actually someone who's teaching meditation, probably not understanding what they're doing. Not like they might, but a lot of people who teach breathwork don't necessarily understand that really what you're teaching is meditation. On the other side of that, we have a lot of individuals who are quote unquote teaching meditation, but really what they're doing is teaching the practices of meditation. Box breathing is a method of meditation. It's a controlled counting system of 3 inhale. It can be any number really, but usually we start with like 3 or 4. 3 inhale, hold for 3 or 4, hold, exhale. So you're holding every position. So each of the inhales, the actual inhale itself takes a certain number of seconds, and it's in a box. So you do it all the same numbers, make a square, fun with geometry and numbers. That is just a system of breathing, which can lead to being in control of your breath, which then can turn into a practice. So your mom's friend was doing her own type of meditation practice, probably using some sort of breath work. So those two things married together make up the majority of meditative practices. But the act of meditation, again, is just simply being aware of your breathing.
So tell me what some different kinds of practices of meditation look like.
The classic ones that we talk about are the Buddhist methods or the Taoist methods. So in Chan Buddhism or in Zen Buddhism tends to incorporate the body more, whereas Chan meditations tend to use some sort of mantra or methodology that's part of the larger canon of Buddhism. So that's where a lot of people get initiated into the understanding of meditations. Zen is more of like sitting in Zazen and using the breath to kind of drown out the terrible feeling in your legs as they fall asleep, or the crossing your eyes and staring at a point on a wall. You're using the breath there to kind of deregulate the pain function. So it's kind of forcing you to focus on it more. Whereas the mantra is more like an individual. You play piano? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with piano, you have to control your breathing just because you can't just be like, dun, dun, because your breathing's making you do that. That's technically a meditation.
Interesting.
So anytime somebody plays like a flute or a wind instrument, that is a meditative practice because they're using it as a cadence. Does that make sense?
It does. That makes a lot of sense.
Outside of that, we have what's considered the New Age practices. So we have, I have a big problem with those because they're more mindfulness than they are meditation.
So break those down.
Okay. So this is why she's my editor. Meditation, again, awareness of breath. So however you go about being aware of your breath, if it's that box breathing structure, if it's a specific mantra cadence count, if it's a just counting, Chan and Zen and some New Age structures will use like count every inhale as 1 and every exhale as 2. Can you make it up to 10 without having to start over? Some people will start with just take an inhale and an exhale. That's 1. Try to make it to 10 without having to start over. That's the method of breathing. That's just meditation. What you do with that, if you want to think about the laundry list of things you have to do, if you want to think about, for you, maybe being, you're saying about being more aware in your body, quieting the mind, that's the practice. So the practice is the mindfulness side and the meditation is the breathing side. And the reason it has to work that way is so that the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system can link up and you are in control of it. Anyone who's ever had a panic attack or anxiety attack, the act of breath work and learning, like, remember we used to tell us like huff into a bag, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay, carbon dioxide does work to bring down your endocrine system. But if you just eliminate the bag and just control the breathing structure, you're also regulating the parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system, specifically sympathetic nervous system, bringing it into parasympathetic so that you can do that rest, digest. Oh, I can chill and I can relax.
Okay. I'm following.
Okay. All right.
I'm following.
So the practice is what you do with it. Meditation is the breathing.
Yeah.
Once you lock down the breathing side of things, you can practice whatever you want. That's why Tai Chi is a moving meditation. That's the one I practice every day.
Okay.
Swimming would become a moving meditation. This is where you'll see a lot of meditation instructors, especially the ones who taught me. They're like, everything's a meditation, Phil. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And then you go years and years and years and you look back and you're like, oh, yeah. Anytime I'm consciously controlling my breathing, I'm meditating.
Okay.
That could be at the line in the grocery store. It could be at the red light in traffic. If you're aware of your breathing and you're being consciously controlling of it, you're meditating.
Interesting. Because I think a lot of times meditation is portrayed as a certain state of being. But that sounds more like that would be the practice.
So that actually goes one step further.
Okay.
You're a quick learner. That has to do with mental states.
Okay.
So this one gets a little complicated as far as initiating the conversation about how brainwave patterns work.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know a lot about like how EKGs and how we do brain studies work? Do you know a lot about that?
I know a little bit about it. So interestingly, we have our oldest daughter signed up in a study in CHOP. And every 12 to 18 months she goes and they just look at kind of brainwave patterns. They take a brain scan. The idea is to identify if the brainwaves and the brain scans of children through adolescence are different for kids with autism or ADHD versus a control group. So my exposure is mostly there just through kind of learning and understanding as she's been going through this study. And then recently I learned about, like, I want to say it's a Davis machine. I don't know if that's right, where you have like kind of audio stimulation of like certain tones going through at the same time. You have like a glasses on that kind of do like pulsating light that you would see. And I think the idea was there to like get into alpha brain waves.
Yes, that was partially developed by the Monroe Institute. It might be called a Davis machine. We can check on that, but
yeah,
that's from
maybe Octavia knows what it's called.
Yeah, we can actually check in with Octavia. This would be a good time to see what she has to say on some of this. See if she's awake. Octavia, can you tell us about how an EKG machine works?
Sure. So an EKG machine, or an electrocardiogram machine, basically works by picking up the electrical signals your heart generates. It's got these little electrodes that get placed on your
Sorry,
skin.
that's my bad, actually. Not EKG. The one for, is it a CAT scan for brain activity?
Ah, gotcha. No worries at all. So if you're talking about scanning brain activity, you're probably thinking of something like an EEG machine, which measures electrical activity in your brain. Or if you mean imaging the brain structure, then a CT scan or an MRI would be the right tool. Just let me know which one you had in mind.
So on an EEG, does that measure the brainwave state? So essentially beta, alpha, gamma, or delta?
Exactly. You got it. And EEG is all about measuring those different brainwave patterns. So when you hear people talking about alpha waves or beta waves, the EEG is what's picking up their signals and letting you see what state your brain's in.
And can you list out the brainwave patterns top to bottom? Is it alpha, beta, gamma, delta? I think I'm missing one in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you the quick run through. So generally we talk about gamma waves at the high end, then beta, then alpha, then theta, and then delta at the slowest end. So there's that extra theta band in there. But that's basically the little lineup of brainwave frequencies.
Perfect. Thank you, Octavia. So let's boil all that down as to what it actually means in the light of the conversation of meditation, and then using that, and then also what they're measuring. I think it's actually an interesting hypothesis what they might be doing with that to see if any level of neurodivergence is a calculation of when people dip in and out of those brainwave states, or also if they have an awareness of it. I'm very aware of my brainwave patterns because I did things through the Monroe Institute, which is brainwave entrainment. So gamma is kind of, I'm probably gonna get the list all wrong, but gamma is kind of regular like activity, like daily, like moving, like high level cognitive function. And then stepping down, delta all the way at the bottom, that's your non-REM, like you are out. Each one of those has a Hertzian frequency. So most things in the world can be measured in some sort of frequency pattern.
Yeah.
When we talk about brainwave states, we're talking in the sense of what range of Hertzian frequency are we at? 0 to 4 is delta. Above that, theta is somewhere from 4 to, I think, 16, 12 or 16, somewhere around there. It might be a little lower. Maybe it's 8. It doesn't really matter. But then we step up through the patterning to get into that gamma state, which would be like super high level, either playing a sport or doing a really high level cognitive function. Alpha is essentially where you spend most of your day. And you might dip down into beta. That's kind of like that dreamy state a little bit, like maybe daydreaming a little bit. Those patterns are the function of the breathing in rhythm. Also, what you're doing with your mind during the practice. So mindfulness controls the level of activity happening in the brainwave pattern, which the EEG would pick up, whereas the breathing, the meditation, is what's bringing you out of that high-level, crazy functional cognitive state down into maybe more of that daydreamy state so that you can use more imaginative processing instead of having to worry about being attacked by a bear.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Do you have any questions on that so far?
No, that actually, it makes a lot of sense because I think when you think about it in like dream states, obviously when you're out, you're whatever. But to think of getting into that kind of alpha, almost asleep, not quite asleep versus like into the daydreamy state, that's something that you do when you're in a safe space. And when your body is telling itself that you are able to relax. And so that it makes a lot of sense that would be related to the kind of meditation and mindfulness space. It makes sense that they would be kind of correlated there.
And so that's where dreams are a technical function of meditation. You are in a rhythmic breathing pattern in a theta brainwave state, which is when REM happens, random eye movement dream state happens at theta level. That delta is actually when that shuts off. If you've ever watched somebody like sleeping and their eyes are moving back and forth and then they stop, they're either waking up or they're dipping into that, like, you could shake them all day long. They won't wake up.
They're not going to wake up.
And that only lasts for about a half hour to 45 minutes. Sometimes for some people, it's like completely throughout the night. But this is where the research shows us a meditative state during the day, which can dip into that theta range, but also in that daydreamy beta state. Like if there's a kind of crossover in the brainwave patterning, that can help reset some of those functions that you would typically do either in REM or non-REM. A DRS, a deep relaxive state, which is what I do in my practice when we're doing craniosacral and we're really trying to help the endocrine system out. We're dipping into that complete out. And it might be for 30 seconds, but it resets the neurological and the endocrine system to say, hey, there's something going on here. Here's a reset. Really helpful for cortisol cascades. But that's on like let's do a therapeutic function. Right. Whereas meditation can be used during the day, just a normal breathing pattern to help with that as almost like a supplement. Like I'm going to take a breathing supplement. That's it's like a exercise snack. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. Can you see yourself doing that throughout the day?
I think I have done it throughout the day. So I work in a corporate environment. And have for a very long time. And so I think one of the times that I use it most frequently is, sometimes you get an email or a message or you're in a meeting and someone's just, you take the moment, you breathe and you realize you don't need to respond in that moment, or you can draft a response and just wait on it. Right. And I think, so that's kind of almost those moments when I realize I need to stop and then I breathe through it and I just kind of think through what I want to do. Maybe not exactly meditation, but that's the first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking, no, there's a conscious action where I am forcing myself to stop and to reset and do something differently.
So in that specific moment, I would absolutely call it a meditation practice. Now, again, meditation, putting practice and meditation together, you're using the breath to slow you down. So you're bringing yourself towards a parasympathetic state by being like, let me take a big, deep breath here. At the same time, you're probably bringing yourself out of a heightened cognitive because like you just got set off, right? Like, not like maybe it's not that bad.
Yeah.
But you've increased your cognitive and you're really hyper-focused on this thing, which is probably degrading your awareness around you. And then you use the breath to bring you out of that. That is all three pieces, right? So we've controlled the breathing, the endocrine system and nervous system. We've controlled the essentially brainwave patterning and then allowed for some sort of mental state to elicit a response. That's pretty much the whole package. So I would absolutely consider that some sort of meditation practice.
Yeah.
Have you experienced any other ones like that you could think like, oh, I breathed through this?
I mean, other than giving birth.
I was hoping you were going to say that. That was a setup.
I was going to say that was quite the setup there, Phil. I mean, yeah, obviously that was one of them. Although I will say the first time I did not do well because they had to put me on oxygen because I didn't breathe correctly.
Oh, interesting.
So that was, but yeah, and then my two birth stories could be a whole different podcast.
Yeah, they tend to be. I'm sorry to all of the women in the world where the entire Western medicine system has just forgotten that you deserve care, even though you're pregnant. And we care about the baby, but post care, whole nine thing. I'm not going to get into.
Yeah, no, we could go into a whole thing about why I had a midwife instead of. Yeah.
Did you do any Lamaze breathing?
We did. So with our first child, we went to classes with the midwife and we learned all about different Lamaze breathing, and we tried to use some of those practices while in the hospital. You don't know what you're getting into until you're into it. And so sometimes it's hard to remember what you were being taught. And so having that midwife or a doula with you to help you, remind you of that breathing practice and breathing through the pain and just breathing through the experience, super helpful. Because your partner might just be as hyper.
Yeah, they probably should learn it too.
I mean, I think they're in the class, but they in the moment are just as overwhelmed, I think, as their partner.
So there's a couple things to break down there. One, you keyed into a big thing about all meditation or meditative practices known as mindfulness. Repetition is the mother of all skill and failure is its father. You have to fail at it regularly. That was the design of the Zen processes, was to make you fail.
Oh.
Right. So they're excruciating. Most people think they're doing Zen meditations. They're not. As someone who was put through a rigorous Zen meditation set, I even failed out of it. It's not something I practice regularly because it's...
Well, like you said, it's working through the pain.
Yeah. You are sitting in Zazen and you're just screaming at you like, hey, we're not getting blood flow.
Yeah.
Or you're staring at a point on the wall trying to cross your eyes so that you see the point, but it's also you're seeing the point in front of the middle of your nose, but also seeing the point on the wall at the same time. It just hurts. Your brain hurts. It opens a lot of things. It is a very I shouldn't say. It's a very beneficial practice as far as, I know it's going to sound kind of woo-woo, but decalcification and activation of the pineal gland, as well as the medulla oblongata. It helps with brain syncing, which is what the Monroe Institute did, essentially hemi-syncing. That's a trademark term. I have to mention that because they get mad at people for that one, where you're getting both hemispheres to activate at a similar frequency. They kind of do a sync up. That's what happens when we're in dream states. This is why you can have tactile responses in your dream, even though you don't, because your logical processing brain is going, oh, hey, tactile response.
Yeah.
But stepping back to the Lamaze thing, so repetition, mother of all skill, failure is his father. Zen system is designed to make you fail so that you learn that repetition so you can just do it on cue because you know what the failure point is. And so you kind of know what you're capable of. It's almost like VO2 maxing when we talk about physical activity. With the repetition, you get into that state of like, oh, I don't have to think about this too much, so I get to actually do it. that is where the mind-body connection comes from in the meditative practice, because you're training the body. Breathing is a physical activity, it's a muscle. You are training the diaphragm to go up and down, which is really actually relax, exhale, contract, inhale, which is the first thing I tell everyone to start with. If you've never done any diaphragmatic breathing, start there so you understand how your breathing works, which is what Le Mans does. That's why I like their system. What a lot of people don't know, and I'll probably get in trouble for this one, Le Mans breathing comes from the Chan side and a little bit of the Taoist breathing sets. So they use the traditional Chinese medicine sounds, ha, he, ho.
Mm-hmm.
There's other ones too. She, her, sure, ha, she, huh, and he, and ho are all of the, I might have actually added one in there. I forget how it goes. They're the three Dantian points, which is what Le Mans breathing uses, ha, he, and ho. So ha, he, ho. Those are the ones, that's the three Dantian, the triple burner. And then it goes farther in the Ayurvedic system and hits each one of the, why am I blanking on the term? Chakras. Each of those sounds also links up to when people do like om, like nami majra, like that om sound. Well, all you have to do is change the letter in front of the om, and it changes the reverberation of the chakra. This is where everything gets into like everything's energy, everything's light, everything's, craziness. But they took that system and just boiled it down to make it useful for
that practice, that need.
That's all they really did. Did you find success with it at all?
I think earlier in the process of giving birth, so earlier in labor, yes, I definitely found success with that. I will also note that I did not have any medications. So I think I was trying to work through the pain in a way that I forced myself to without having any Western medicine engagement and support, I guess. And that was a personal choice. Like I was given the option and I chose not to have medication, like any medication or intervention. And so towards the end of the labor, when I was tired, that's when I started to slip and not be able to do those practices because I was exhausted. And then I needed oxygen because I was forgetting to breathe for myself, which was not helpful for the whole process. So I will say that for the first time I went through labor, that was kind of that experience, and I forgot. The second time I went through labor, it was in my bathroom. And so it was very fast. And I could recognize instantly the change in the way that I needed to breathe and the way that I needed to relax. Because I knew we weren't going to get to the hospital in time. And so having had the previous experience and knowing what to expect definitely helped, because my body just remembered and kind of knew what it needed to do. And then that helped me realize how I needed to breathe and work through it.
So that's a perfect example of why regular meditation practice is the key to developing all of like the fun functional things people want to talk about in the woo-woo world. And even in just like, we talk about Tai Chi, the New England Journal of Medicine says like, oh, it's great for the immune system. It's great for mobility, flexibility. Yeah, well, there's also a giant breathing aspect to it. Same thing for yoga. We're going to harp on yoga here in a bit because I always do and I get in trouble for it, but that's okay. What I want to ask before that is, have you ever used the Le Mans breathing pattern since?
Yeah, I have. It is a fantastic pattern when your kids trigger you and they know how to push your buttons, right? And I don't think I consciously like in my head, I wasn't calling it Le Mans, right? But I was centering my breathing. I wasn't responding immediately. I was taking a few deep breaths. And then I was just kind of working through the breaths in different ways until I felt grounded and centered and relaxed enough to respond to the moment.
So you have meditated.
Apparently I have, Phil.
See, these are the things I want to.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, growing up in Western society, how much of, you have visuals from media and from Hollywood of like, what is the right thing or what is the way that it's supposed to look? Or you have, the self-help books that are out there that they're like, this is the way it should be. This is what you're doing or feeling when you're meditating. That I think just maybe complicates things more than it necessarily needs to. And I think for me, I've always had a mental block in the sense that I was once told that I was talking with someone about like literature and stuff. And I was just like, yeah, I just never really got into poetry, right? Like I just didn't, it didn't resonate with me. And they're like, that's not surprising. You can't live in the moment. And I was like, And like, I think for me, that always kind of, I guess affiliated that or kind of drew a similarity with that with meditation, where like I have such a hard time quieting my mind and living in the moment that it's just something that I just didn't connect with. And so I think maybe the purposeful act of it and trying to sit down and say, okay, I want to meditate, right? Like, and telling my brain that's what I want to do is when it gets hard, because my mind will do 1,000 things and it's harder. Let's say I wanted to meditate for 4 minutes, right? It will take me 3.5 minutes to let my mind stop. And in that last 30 seconds, I'll be like, oh, okay. But it just takes so long for me to get there. I have to like run through the list of like, what is going on? Why am I doing this? Are there other things I should be doing right now? And then I'm thinking of the things that are happening during the day, but I have to like getting those thoughts to stop flowing in while I'm trying to focus on breathing or relaxation. It has always been like the struggle for me.
So let's do a side tangent for a second and go through the corruption.
That was a whole lot.
No, that's good. It hit a lot of the key things. So let's talk about the corruption of meditation and mindfulness in the Western society.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of my personal pet peeves even that I've let go over the years because I just don't get it.
I'm happy to bring it back for you.
I just stopped engaging with it. I stopped teaching meditation probably 7 or 8 years ago. I did for a while when I was a martial arts instructor, and I trained all my fighters in it when I trained fighters. I've been trained in multiple different disciplines. My security background, I worked with this guy named Biz. That was his call sign. He was Zen meditation. Like that's what he did. That guy would put himself through things that he was a little crazy. But on so my training with Dr. Fong, which was the traditional Chinese medicine teacher who taught me, he would have said immediately, he would have stopped you and been like, that 3 minutes and 30 seconds was the meditation. He would have been like, the extra 30 seconds you wasted. That's what he would have said. And the reason for that is because we've taken away one very specific word that the Western system doesn't use really for anything, and that's called intentions. We don't have the intention to actually meditate because we don't have the intention to take control of our breathing and be aware of our body. That's the first step. As long as you have that intention, you've now started meditating. Once that meditation occurs, then you have to have the intention to do something with your mental space or do something with your physical body or both, or for those individuals who prefer prayer, to do something in a spiritual intention. Any level you do that, you're creating the link. And I forget what the word Dr. Fong used to use for it was, but essentially it was getting the spiritual body to talk to the physical body, using the mind as the connection. And I write about this in the book we're working on currently. That link is how the 3 health bodies put themselves together in a moment. And typically they're discordant. And this is where Western society has really put down that oh, look at this super zen, super chill, peaceful, reverent moment of this person on a mountain taking in a big deep breath, staring. That's nonsense. That has nothing to do with meditation. Biz used to say, meditation happens when the bullet passed my head. Everything else shut off and everything was go time. All my training comes out. Now remember, I was non-military. I was domestic security. But he was an operator. And his thing was, he would say, when the bullet passed my head, that's when meditation starts. It's go time. Everything else goes away. You literally live in the moment, because he was forced into it.
Yeah.
He had no choice. So backing away from that extreme example. Sure. Which Western system would use too, right? They would use that. That's why I use it as an example. They'd be like, oh yeah. And then they would slow down the music.
And slow the bullet down. Oh yeah, 100%. All Matrix all the time.
Absolutely. If we just step away from those extremes, right? The person on the mountain or someone like a military operator, and we go to the basic level of the moment between controlling your breathing and being aware of your body, and that little moment where everything kind of pulls back. Have you experienced that before? I'm going to tell you when you have, but let's see if you can.
Now I'm just curious about what you're going to say.
So you're a mom.
I am.
You've experienced it anytime one of your children got hurt.
Yes, that's fair.
That's a meditative moment.
Yeah.
Everything else disappears.
Everything else disappears.
There could be a truck coming at you. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
That's a meditative moment when all three health bodies link up, because the timing of it all comes together. So when we talk about the timing of it all, I think we've talked about Chronos and Kairos.
Yep.
Chronos, the measurement of time, Kairos, the subjective understanding of time. This is also what psychedelics do, which is why people want to put psychedelics in the meditative world and spiritual practices and stuff like that. I would say it's a little bit of adjacent to that. It's a kicker, right? Just like the Zen meditation, and Zen meditation can achieve the same brainwave states. And so can Chan and some other meditations. Transcendental meditation can get there with their chants and specific mantras, but it's all about that brainwave patterning. That's the part the Western system has forgotten about. It's like, what brainwave pattern are you in? Because any one of them can be a meditative state. They just always want to look at the extremes. They want to look at delta, that like this person's not even alive. They're just sitting there doing nothing. Or someone like a military operator in the gamma state where they're like
hyper-focused.
They can literally see miles, everything. They can hear flies buzzing 20 feet away. That happens in the moment for a mom specifically when their child gets hurt.
Yeah.
It just slows everything down. Have you experienced like that slowdown moment?
Definitely. Yeah. I think, and I think I've experienced it in a positive and a negative way. So in a negative way, my youngest broke her leg, at a unnamed trampoline park. And, because I don't want you to get in trouble.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
And I wasn't there when it happened. But I did meet them at the hospital. And so I can remember every moment of her being in that bed late at night, like completely knocked out because she was just exhausted, and trying to make sure that like the medical professionals had everything they needed to make sure that she was safe and that she was going to like no harm for her development into the future. So like there's just everything was kind of slowed down as I focused on exactly the details that I needed to focus on. My husband was there. I don't even remember what he said because I was just hyper focused on what do I need to do to make sure that this child is going to be okay. On the positive side, I think that like everything's slowing down and connecting piece. I remember happening when my husband came back from a deployment once and seeing my daughter run to the plane when they came off, right? Like that was just everything else disappeared and just the focus on that and seeing that connection. It was just, I think it was the same kind of experience and feeling, just in a very, not in a panic mode, if you would.
So with those two examples, we now know you have meditated before, and we do know you have lived in the moment.
You're right.
So that's meditation, which you've done. You've taken a breath, you've stepped back, and you've lived in the moment where everything else kind of disappears, everything's hyper-focused, and it just feels like you're in alignment.
Yeah.
And on the same side of that, your brain memorizes it. Like it remembers it.
It remembers it.
Clarity's there, the sounds, the colors, smell, all your olfactory nerves working. All of that comes together in that moment.
That alignment of the body, the mind, the spirit.
Yes. When the body, mind, and the spirit all line up, those three health bodies, that is the moment all cultivation practices are trying to accomplish with their meditations.
Okay.
Now we get into cultivation stuff. And this is like the upper echelon. This is the Shaolin, breathing techniques and traditional Chinese medicine, Taoists, pieces, the Ayurvedic. I don't use the word guru because it's actually a derogative term. Yeah. But what people would call like the guru mind, that mindset. This is what yogis are trying to accomplish, although yoga has been, I told you we would get to the part where I knocked on yoga. Yeah. Yoga is a Western practice. It's like Sadhguru once came out and said that Shaolin got their practices from yoga. That's not true because yoga is not actually its own thing. Yoga is a part of Ayurvedic medicine. It is a breathing practice before it is a stretching practice. All yoga starts with breath.
Yes.
All Tai Chi starts with breath. Most martial arts start with breath. Most martial situations start with breath, right? That's the bullet past my head, take a breath, go. When that moment occurs, the time differentiation between the health bodies changes. The body's the slowest, the mind's the middle ground, and the spirit is always like way ahead. This is what psychedelics do. They bring the mind closer to that spiritual frequency, we'll call it, that like putting things together. When we put, sorry, phones are buzzing. I'm like, what's going on? No, go away. When we put that moment together, that's being in the moment. Marcus Aurelius would have written about this in Stoicism when he was pondering some sort of like existential crisis to the empire and just like had an epiphany. An accountant will write about it when they're working on a really hard tax return. In the middle of the night, they wake up at 3 a.m. and they're like, aha, you've probably done it. Let's check in. Have you done that working on a major project? Because you do corporate work. Like, have you?
I do corporate work. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There are definitely those moments where it's that thing that keeps you up at night. And then all of a sudden it doesn't, because you have that clarity, or you think of a different way of approaching the problem or the challenge. And all of a sudden it just feels easier, and you don't know how you didn't get that before, but something lined up and you're able to think, okay, this makes more sense, and I can go down a different path or try something new or different now because I had that moment of clarity.
So that is the mental state that leads to the epiphany or the understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Meditation is how you get yourself to that mental state to get that outcome. So Western practice, the biggest corruption is we always do this. We always put we always put the middle piece first. We never give the people the answer, right? What happens at the end, because they got to figure that out for themselves.
Well, once upon a time, happily ever after.
Exactly. But we also don't give them the starting point. The starting point, if you want to have some sort of practice that gives you a better mental clarity for your day, wake up every morning, put your feet flat on the floor, and take 10 deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, in one of two ways. This is a Shaolin breathing method. You can hot fog a mirror, that relaxes you. Or you can do the Le Mans, and blow out. Actually, I think they use both. They do the ha-he-ho is the hot breath. So that's supposed to relax you. And then when you do the cold breath, like you're trying to blow out a candle, that holds or stores energy in the body. Mm-hmm. We would say chi or ki even, because the Japanese arts use it as well. But if you do 10 of those in through the nose and out through the mouth, which is a cleansing breath, that sets you up for whatever you're going to do. Do I need to relax, or do I need to get ready to do action? You could do that at a traffic light. Traffic lights are way longer than you think they are, right?
They are.
You have plenty of time.
Especially at 5 points.
Oh, yeah. You have plenty of time to take 10 breaths. Absolutely. So when we use the breath, that starts the process. Whatever you do in that process, that can be living in the moment if you want, or it could simply be trying to figure out, like, what do the kids have to do today? Then you get the result. The aha moment, or the feeling calmer, or the having the clarity. Maybe if it's an intuitive moment, I do it a lot here. If I take a breath during a bodywork practice, I'm looking for what everything else is telling me that my conscious isn't filtering. And we're going to get into the conscious thing here in a second, because that's kind of like one of the biggest pieces. But any questions on that so far?
None.
No.
No.
All right, fair enough. Stepping back to the Monroe Institute and this brainwave patterning system, there's a lot of different tools that the world has come up with to aid us in this. There isn't just breathing. There's also noise. This happens with shamanic drumming or tribal drumming.
Mm-hmm.
That pattern is specific to a frequency that puts your body into a brainwave state. You can do it with your breath. You can do it with music. This is why music affects people so much. And I know it sounds like a conspiracy, but the whole, C tuned to 440 instead of 432, that's a real thing. I studied it for years, trying to figure out why some binaural beats and some isochronic beats, which are, I should explain those, I'll do that in a second, why they work and why they don't. If you have a bad pair of headphones and you're using C at 440, your body doesn't attune to that.
I'm going to have you pause.
Sure.
Okay. C at 440, C at 430. Back up. Tell me what those are.
Oh, sorry. The note C in most modern music is tuned to 440 hertz.
Okay.
It's real. The old version was 432 hertz.
What's the old version? What do you mean? Like, when did it change?
That was the modern music industry changed it.
Interesting.
So 432 hertz is the natural frequency
of middle C.
Of middle C. Then they made it 440 because it makes all the octaves easier. So auto-tune works really well because 440 hertz is middle C, and all the octaves are really easy to measure out from there.
Okay.
432 makes things and gets a little crazy going up and down the scales. Beethoven, Bach, Schoedner, even Debussy, I believe uses, which is why I really like Debussy, is they use 432, and they did for years. That's all pianos were always tuned to middle C being 432 hertz. That's why you have an emotional response to that type of music. Where if you listen to a modern piano that's not tuned to that, it's not the same. Have you ever experienced that?
I think maybe not with the piano difference. So we have a piano in our house. I'm actually curious to figure out what it's tuned to right now, right? I want to go home and be like, how do I figure this out? I think for me, it's the idea that, so when I was in college or grad school, I would study to music, to Vivaldi, to Bach, to Beethoven, just the classic masters, basically. And it put me in a space of mind where like I could relax and I could concentrate and I could focus on what it was that I was studying, in a way that modern music couldn't. I don't know if it was the way that my brain was tuned to it. It just, even if I didn't know what the next notes were in the music, it felt predictable in the sense that like it would be comforting, as I studied. And, you know, other friends were listening to like rock or modern music. And I was like, I cannot, like, my brain is trying to figure out what's next there. And I could not close it off. I would be focusing too much on the music and the lyrics and the words and the pattern. Whereas with the classic music, it could just be background for me because it felt patterned already and it felt comfortable. And I was able to tune into that enough that I could then remember things. And to this day, like I'll listen to Vivaldi and still think about studying a specific topic.
So what you did there was you used music to put yourself into a meditative state.
Correct.
Which was a brainwave pattern. That brainwave pattern was engaged easier because of the music you were using to do so. This is why I'm very peculiar about the type of music I'll listen to. I don't listen to anything with lyrics because it gets stuck in my brain. The neurodivergence there just doesn't work out. But also, you know, when I was younger, I listened to angry music. I was an angry kid.
Mm-hmm.
The language and the tone structure, music itself as a language, that tone structure changes you fundamentally as a person. Studying sacred geometry and all these other things and tone structures, just watching the patterns water will make with a tone. Or also, I always blank on his name. There was a Japanese scientist who froze water during frequency in training. So they would trade in the water to a frequency, and then they would freeze it to look at the crystalline patterns, and they're uniform to the frequency.
That's so interesting.
So if you play a tone to water and you entrain that water, I forget how long it takes. I think it's 24 hours. Then freeze that water while not playing the tone. It has entrained to that crystalline shape, and it will be uniform.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is like the snowflake theory thing.
Yeah.
That tells us that water structures hold patterns, even vibrational states. So we go one level deeper. Meditation's about a vibrational state. The tool you get there, I could care less about, to be honest, if it's music, because some people need that. If you know, this is where you get into what kind of learner are you? What type of learner would you say you are?
I think my learning style has changed a little bit over time. I think when I was younger, I was much more tactile. And the way that I learned, I like to experience the things. I like to hold it, touch it, experiment, figure out why. And I think modern education systems beat that out of me. And so I am just a very generic, like I am fine reading text and learning from text. I don't need the visuals as much anymore. I think visuals are a much stronger way of communicating a message. But I wanted to be successful. I wanted to, I'm the oldest child. I'm the oldest grandchild. I wanted to meet everyone's expectations. And so I had to change my learning style to match the school and the process that I was in so that I could excel.
Okay. So that is the nature versus nurture conversation as far as education goes. I would say it's a little bit more schooling than education on that one.
That is, yes.
But with text-based learning structures, so we would consider that a visual learning process. You're memorizing symbolic pieces, right? So the flow of your reading structure matters the most. So if your eyes are able to quickly, and I know they are because you edit way faster than I do, if your eyes are able to scan text that way with that visual representation, there's a pattern there. There's a frequency there. And you probably have moments where you see, and you can tell me if I'm sure this is true or not, where a piece of information comes across on a page that you know to be important, and it feels like you're slowing down, but you haven't slowed down. Have you ever had that?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I can definitely, like, when I'm reading a passage, be it yours or in a book or wherever it might be, I can pull that out and just see as I go through the page, like, this is the essence of what I'm supposed to be reading right now. And this is where I need to focus. My brain just kind of pulls in on that. Now that you're talking about reading and kind of like a pattern and everything, I'm wondering if, I don't even know, but I'm wondering if this is like the reason that I love reading so much before I go to bed is because it relaxes my mind and I am then able to fall asleep so much easier than if I watch a show before bed, right? Like if I watch a TV show before bed, and I'm sure it has a lot to do with the light too, but I like, my brain isn't done yet, but reading a book or even like my Kindle or whatever it might be, I am able to just, my brain much more quickly enters into a quiet state. This is why I do not edit your books at night, because I'm like, oh, I will fall asleep now as I read.
I mean, my writing can put anyone to sleep.
That's not true.
So that specific conversation you just had is the conversation about mastery. This is the 10,000 hours question. This is the, how long do you go from being a beginner to an intermediary to a master?
Yeah.
Or what they would consider confluent in the understanding of how something works. That's a process where, beginners think they know everything. Intermediates think they know nothing. Masters know they know something. Mastery is a meditation on top of being a skilled understanding, because you've taken out all of the hard parts. Right? For you, reading is second nature. Mm-hmm. You've done it so much and you're so capable of doing it. You don't have to do what a lot of younger individuals are do, or someone who has maybe a dyslexia, or I don't want to name names, but she'll know who I'm talking about. Individuals who have trouble with fonts. So
she's very near and dear to my heart.
But those pieces will limit that process. So unless an individual like that trains more and more and more and gets over that limitation, they're not able to use it as a meditative practice. For you, due to mastery of reading symbols, that can be a meditative practice. This is no different, and I absolutely mean no different than a runner's high. Yes, there's an endocrine system response as far as runner's highs go. But when we talk about this brain state, when you talk about a runner and they're like, oh, yes, the endocrine system did create some part of that, but that clarity they have after, and the moment even after a workout, or if you talk to any professional athlete and they said like, yeah, I could just everything slowed down. I could see it. I made it happen. That is a meditative state. It's a brainwave state.
Is that mindfulness? Seeing it, make it happen?
You figured it out. It's mindfulness. So that is how mindfulness gets used. But unless the meditative state happens, it won't. Going back to mastery is the understanding of knowing how to use breathing even when you're not thinking about using it. My teacher used to tell me all the time, everything becomes a meditation. Once you learn true Tai Chi, Qigong, everything becomes Tai Chi, everything becomes Qigong. It was a bad translation factor of traditional Chinese medicine and also traditional Chinese practices, specifically from the Shaolin arts and even the Taoist arts with a lot of the Qigong that I practiced. I didn't understand why there was all this hyperbole all the time and these whimsical statements. I thought it was part of it. I have to go search out some huge meaning. No, it's just bad translation.
Okay.
Right? Translating Mandarin, or worse than that, Cantonese to English doesn't go well, right? Especially if it's ancient Chinese, right? Which had its own set of dialects. Not great. On the Japanese side, we can get a little bit better with some of the key meditations and practices, although they're very hyper straightforward. So sometimes you take it a little too literally. Those bad translations was always sending me off to find some mystical answer, when the reality of the situation was, oh, if I just practice this enough, I'll know when to breathe and how to breathe when I need to do it. It's that simple. I know if I need to make a movement in this direction or that direction for Tai Chi, this breath happens. So I don't have to think about it. When you're reading, your breath probably calms. It's probably a nice even pace. You don't have to think about it, but you are doing it outside of a normal reactive state. So it becomes almost a subconscious program.
Yeah.
Which makes mindfulness far more powerful. Does that make sense?
I do. Yes, that resonates a lot.
Do you have any questions about that so far? We've covered a lot here.
Not question. I will say that all of this is making me think of the different times that I have probably been in a meditative state or a mindfulness state, but didn't think of it in that way.
Yeah. So mindfulness is just the use of that meditative state.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go one step further with that, you look at the things that put you there or the things that you can do to get there regularly without having to think about it. Music, we just talked about, that's one of them. The Monroe Institute uses what's known as binaural beats or brainwave entrainment. So what they do is they pay.
That's what I was, binaural beats. That's what I was trying to, yeah. Okay.
And there might be I forget, Johnson or Davison machine that does that specifically if they're adding some sort of visual process to that as well. That's like the next level that we've come up with more recently is to add the visual acuity. But a binaural beat is just a tone that's played in one ear and a separate tone that's played in another ear that has a carrier tone. So the carrier tone is the differentiation that the hemispheres, your different side lobes of your brain, they hear the difference. So if I play 100 hertz in one ear and 101 in the other, you're going to hear a 1 hertz carrier tone. That's the 1 hertz difference between the two tones that your brain then entrains to. The same way water entrains to a frequency, our brains do it. Our brains are smart enough to know that there's a difference in the patterns. And so it figures out what that difference is. And it goes, what's this? I need to figure this out.
Yeah.
And then entrains itself to it. At the same time, it uses the magnum corpusculum, the big electrical storm between your brain, to start linking things up. We used to have the old adage about how, you can be left hemisphere
brain or right
yeah.
brain. Yeah.
Well, realistically, we use 30% of either side at all times. Really, maybe it's a little less than that, 20%. But you're doing some sort of logical function as well as the creative function. I would say people have a dominant lobe that they use. That's the left eye, right eye dominance.
Yeah.
And you can switch that, which is what Zen training does and Chan training does. They make you flip which eye you're focusing with. It's really weird. You start to feel burning in between your face. That's why they cross their eyes. It's a whole thing. That entrains the brain in its own way. So I can look at something with my left eye using my right hemisphere, because the eyes are cross-wired, to be a little bit more creative. I'm going to have that backwards. I always get them backwards. I don't feel like getting Octavia on to figure it out. Right eye creative, left eye logical. Yeah, because the hemispheres are flipped. So if I want to be more logical, I'm left eye. If I want to be more creative, I would then train my focus to my right eye. It's just one more manipulation you can use, just like the music, just like there's all these, you can just go a huge rabbit hole. The binaural beats, the same thing. If I want to have a delta brainwave pattern and really start to relax, I play probably something like now you can use other carrier tones, where it gets really complex. I can play something like 432 hertz, which has its own frequency set in the body. That's why C is very specific. My neurodivergence is kicking in, so I will tell people, like, if you want a great conspiracy theory to jump down, why are there no more bells? What happened to all the bells? Bells are gone. Bells are all tuned to very specific frequencies, and they do things to the environment around them, those frequencies. So yeah, ask about where all the bells went. And why they cracked the Liberty Bell might be an interesting question. And now that it's fixed, it has a different tone structure, which is not so great for people. Actually, I think that's why they don't play it very much. But what do I know? Those tone structures can have carrier frequencies inside themselves. So I could use 432, and I could use maybe 228. I think is one of the ones for digestive health. So I can pick tones that have different effects on the body and then have a shift in their tone structures so that they have a carrier wave that does a whole nother effect. So you can get really complex with the binaural beats or isochronic beats, which is when a tone gets played and then turns off, and the pattern of turning on and off.
Okay.
So you can use a monotone for that. You can use a single speaker instead of having to wear headphones. Mm-hmm. There's other older methods that don't really work so well. So most of them stick to the binaural or isochronic at this point. But now they have the light entrainment, and that has to do with it's a frequency. It's how often is that light being pulsed into your eye. This is why LCD monitors and older monitors, they hurt your eyes. Fluorescent lights, that flickering you don't necessarily see your eyes entrained to it. That's what gives you the headache.
Yeah.
And so some people are more sensitive than others. That goes all the way down into, I know you were looking at it earlier, biogeometry, Dr. Ibrahim Karim, with electromagnetic radiation, right? I would say the hardest part about modern society when it comes to meditation is you don't realize what you're being bombarded with all the time. Not only are you being bombarded with a plethora of daily tasks and items and other people to pay attention to, but a bunch of background radiation, a bunch of noise as far as marketing. And this is why I say everything's a war and we're at war with everything all the time. So before I go any farther on that, do you have any questions on all those pieces? That was a lot.
No, it was a lot. It was interesting. You were talking about the visual piece and training your eyes. And I know that this isn't exactly the same. But in my head, I'm like, there's got to be some relation here. So when we were younger, my brother for the longest time had awful eyesight and could not catch a ball because he actually saw double. And it took a really long time to find an optometrist that could actually saw him and instantly knew oh, for how long have you been seeing two balls coming your way, right? Like you don't know where to go. And then we did eye therapy for years. And we could do it at the facility, we could do it at home, but it was training our eyes in different ways so that we didn't have necessarily a dominance, a left or a right. But anyway, it made me think, I wonder, where the underlying science of that came from. Anyway, it's a whole different conversation piece.
I can give you where to look. There was a study done on an individual back in, I'm going to get the timing wrong, but let's say early 1900s, I believe between 1910 and 1920. Might have been before that, might be 1900, 1910, who had a railway spike.
Yes.
Through the right lobe, I believe it was.
Correct.
And they did a whole bunch. He's totally functional.
He was totally fine.
Yep. And they did a whole bunch of studies on that. That was the initial kickoff to the data set that has become what we know about
left brain, right brain,
left eye, right eye. That's how we figured out the switching between, your left lobe is your right eye, your left eye is your right lobe. Like that kind of kicked all that off and made it more mainstream available because we had a bigger data set and we had this one specific case. There was also a girl not too long after that incident that got studied. I believe hers was due to an illness and they did a complete lobotomy. And instead of having the normal things, they found out she was, I forget what the condition is, all of her organs were switched.
Oh, interesting.
And so what they were expecting to happen as far as loss of limb function, all this stuff, she's backwards, right? So her heart's on the right side. So there was things like that we found out all these things through. So you can, if you want to know more on that, that's where you find it. That same information set ended up being part of the Monroe Institute in some way. Dr. Monroe used a lot of that. Now he also did out-of-body experiences, which is a whole nother level of meditation. So is dream states and what's known as lucid dreaming. They do a lot of lucid dreaming stuff now. But getting off my ridiculous tangents, stepping back to what you can do and what people at home can do, now after this big, long conversation, what would you say is a meditative practice of yours, or how would you use it in your daily life?
So I would say a meditative practice for me is, I think my mornings are my quietest space. It's before the house is completely up, and it's when I'm making tea for myself in the morning, and I am either listening to just music, or I'm listening to a podcast or news or whatever it might be. I'm not actually internalizing any of it. There's just kind of a white noise behind me. And I am just, now that I think about it, those morning hours are when I kind of slow my breathing, and I actually enjoy the tea as just a quiet practice and kind of get myself ready for the day. The days that I don't do that, my days seem to go off the rails right away, right? I don't have that. I need that quiet collection time in the morning to be able to feel as though I'm my most fully functional self, to be able to be what I want to be for my family and for myself throughout the day.
So that's where meditation actually becomes ritualistic when it's added to something like that, right? Like, so before every podcast episode, I have a cup of coffee. I've been doing it for years. Like when I did my old podcast, when I do this podcast, or even just when I come in here in the morning and like I'm getting ready for the day to see my clients, there's a cup of coffee. It's not about the caffeine in the cup of coffee. It's about the act of doing it.
Yes.
And so I think the way you're going about it is really good to start with. Yes, please do start with a quiet space. Don't make it hard on yourself.
Yeah.
All right. It's like going into the gym and trying to do pull-ups if you can't do pull-ups.
Yeah.
Like get the resistant band out to help you out. Like, you know, or do some lat pull downs first, or, you know, build up to it.
Yeah. So
yeah, picking a quiet time of the day. And let's talk about time frame. How much time do you think you spend on this?
I would say I give myself about 20 minutes in the morning. From like getting up to when I feel like I'm ready, should one of the children wake up earlier than they're supposed to. If it's 15 minutes, it's not enough time. But like at the 20 to 30 minute mark, I'm like, yeah, okay. If they wake up, I'm good to go. If they wake up before the 15 to 20 minute mark, I'm not ready for that yet.
Okay. I mean, I would say 20 minutes is more than adequate.
Yeah. Well, and I will say that this is all like literally waking up, getting out of bed, getting downstairs, letting the dog and cat out, like
gotcha.
All of that.
All right, fair. Yeah.
The morning routine, as it were.
I would shoot for 5 minutes of breathing.
Yeah.
That is mindful in the sense that, I shouldn't use that word. Breathing that is you're aware of.
Intentional
breathing. Thank you. That you can do whatever you want with mindfully. If it's going over the laundry list of things to do for the day, totally fine. A lot of people say, you'll hear in the meditation communities words like, oh, in your mind's eye.
Yes.
I wish people would stop using that, because what they don't understand is people think differently. I have an internal dialogue. Do you have an internal dialogue?
I do have an internal dialogue.
Okay. So not everyone has an internal dialogue. Some people know that, some people don't. If you don't have an internal dialogue, some people in that data set are visual representation. They actually draw up images in their mind. Some don't. The only people that in your mind's eye works for are imaginative individuals who can draw up a picture in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
So you just eliminated probably 80% of the populace by saying, oh, in your mind's eye.
Yeah.
No. For you, would you say you're more words-based?
Absolutely.
Okay. So for you, write yourself a story in your head with words.
Yeah.
Like pick the words out, right? And focus on those. That is the mindful practice. Anytime you hear in your mind's eye, just write the story. I have to do it. Every time they're like, oh, imagine in your mind's eye a beautiful vista. I'm like, all right, how would I write that as an author? I'm like, okay, like, all right, so beautiful vista. Well, that's subjective. So, and like, I just go through this logical process of, like, well, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, so it's subjective. So it should be for me because this is my moment. So you have to go through that when you hear those terms. So I wish that people would stop using that because it's nonsense.
And I think the other piece that I wish folks would stop using is the idea of clear your mind. Because I think that's that's where I always got stuck, right? Like, and in talking with you today, I'm like, okay, I don't have to clear my mind to be in meditation, right? But so much of when you hear of meditation and they're like, okay, you're going to start. So you're going to clear your mind and thoughts are going to come in. You acknowledge the thought and push it away. I'm like, the idea for me of having a blank slate with nothing in my mind is stressful. And so that's, I think, why I always thought like, I must be doing something wrong, right? Like I can't think nothing. And in talking with you, I'm realizing that's not the goal here.
No, the goal is focus. So the mindfulness practice, you know, some people, again, they can do the imaginative thing and they can look at cool pictures in their brain. Or you can write your story out and do it that way. You can focus on words. What they're really trying to say, and again, this is where all the translations went wrong. Yeah. Same thing with yoga when I harp on that, because I didn't harp on enough, so I'll harp on it some more. No, yoga is a great practice. I really, go do yoga. But it has to start with the breathing. It's supposed to be a massage of the internal organs, using the poses to put you in those positions to help you better move that breath into those areas to massage. That's the Ayurvedic practice of yoga. That requires some level of being like, okay, I really got to focus on like, oh, this hurts. And then like focusing in And so that's the key to takeaway. You have to focus on something. If you just let all the noise run back in, you're going to lose control of your breathing.
Yes.
That's the key. Like, that's really what they're trying to warn you against. It's more of a warning. They just don't use it that way. We're warning you against letting the intrusive thoughts and the outside noise take control of your breathing again, because your body's then going to respond to that, right? When somebody walks into the room that is a little shady, back in my bouncing days, like, I'd have to like stop my breathing from doing that little like, get ready for action here. Be like, all right, hold on. Let me chill out. Let me see what's going on here. Let me figure it out. And then be like, okay, now I got to throw this person out.
Yeah.
That's really what they're talking about. So that's a great point. Like, they really should stop saying that. It's not helping anybody, quieting your mind. There is no part. Now, in Zen koan meditation, there is a blank spot. It's called gazing into the void. That's a whole different thing, and I wouldn't recommend that for a lot of people, because the void gazes back, and I've been there, and it's a lot. What I would say for you, being someone on the logical side, thinking through the word structures, when you're focused enough, the words disappear and the images actually pop up. Have you ever experienced that before?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, even when you were talking about a beautiful vista, right? Like, I was writing it in my head, like, what would it look? And then I pictured it, right? Like, the images were just there. And so, yeah, I've definitely been in situations where I can the pictures just appear, right? And I think that's another reason I love reading so much, is because it allows my imagination to draw pictures. I think that's also why some people like the book more than the movie, because their imagination has a clearer picture or a more creative picture than whatever would be put on a screen.
I'm actually opposite to that.
Mm-hmm.
I like books more. But
No, I like books more too.
Yeah, no, but I'm opposite to it, because I can't see the scenes.
Interesting.
I can visualize like almost like a kind of whitewashy possibility.
Okay.
But I can't imagine, like, I can't be like, oh, let me draw this out for you.
Yeah.
I don't have that imaginative structure.
Interesting.
Never have. Everything's always hyperlogical.
Yeah.
So I can like put the logic in place, and I've gotten better with it over time, but that got washed out of me when I was younger. So I just don't have that overlay. But I do know from experience, anyone who has that like hyperlogical drive and they're going through like the constant, when it becomes images, or even like with me, I get this is kind of like a general sketch. Yeah. That's when that's your own personal version of mindfulness. Yeah. So any moment you've experienced that, you can now take that and say, oh, this is how I practice my mindfulness. Yeah. That's being mindful.
And I think too, like, when going back to the whole like clear your mind thing, I can think of so many times where I've tried to quiet my mind, or clear my mind, and that's like a challenge to my brain of like, well, let me tell you all the 1,000 things that you're supposed to be thinking, right? But I think the switch happens when I focus on the one or two that matter, right? Yeah. So instead of the laundry list of, okay, you're going grocery shopping, but the car needs to be washed and it also needs to be vacuumed because someone, the dog. And then, oh, by the way, when you go, you need to get gas, but remember that you need to also call the guy that needs to fix the oil next. Like, there's the laundry list. But then when I was able to narrow in and be like, my daughter has something at 5, but then we immediately have to go to something at 6. I need to make dinner before, right? Like, that was my clarity of like, yes, it's still a to-do list, but everything else was just noise. And those are the things that my brain needed to focus on for me to feel like, okay, I know what I need to do today to be successful, or to feel as though things are ordered and okay for the day.
So you just boiled down what mindfulness really is. They want it to be this grand scheme of amazingness. Mm-hmm. It's focus.
It's focus.
You just focused. Mm-hmm. It's a state of focus. That's also the new term for it. The new age term is flow states.
I've heard that.
How much have you heard about flow states?
Literally, just as a passing term of, how did I hear? I feel like it was in a book somewhere that someone was talking about being in a flow state when things just click and they feel almost natural. So kind of like, an athlete that's kind of like hit their stride, or like if you're running, you've kind of hit that stride in your run and you're kind of in that flow state where everything else is everything just seems perfectly aligned and moving forward at the same time.
Have you ever experienced a flow state?
I'm sure I have.
Trick question. We've already gone over it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of different examples though, Phil. I don't want to use the same examples all the time.
So you know where I'm going with this.
I do, but I'm trying to think of different examples.
Yeah. Flow states are one, the three health bodies line up, and you're acting on your non-physical senses to some degree, be they intuitive, intuition, or instinctual, but everything is acting in a non-interrupted focus. That's a true flow state. And I will apologize at this point if you hear my neighbor because they're very loud. Sorry, it's just part of the recording process in this current podcast lounge. The flow state comes about with uninterrupted focus, but in the moment. That's what makes it a true flow state, because you can have uninterrupted focus if you're just like hyper fixated. That's the ADHD state.
Yeah.
But when it's in a uninterrupted focus, that's in a like a mindful state where you have like a, that's the best way to put it, an intentional outcome. Like it all kind of like, yeah, you might like do one of like the, what was that scientist sitting in a bathtub and just figure something out. Like you might have a moment like that where you're just kind of in a flow state and you just take a left turn down some like weird avenue and you're like, oh, like we did earlier with a tangent.
Yeah.
That's still a flow state, but it just has to have that intention of acting towards an outcome that's uninterrupted focus where everything lines up in the moment. So as long as you're in the moment and there's intention behind it and the focus is steady, that's a flow state.
Yeah.
That is typically right above theta brainwave patterning into that lower beta level there, dips into alpha when you have like a little like, aha, and then comes back down. Like that's why they call it a flow state. For anybody who wants to actually know, that term came about because if you watch the EEG on the brainwave pattern, it's a flow. It's a dipping in and out of those three brainwave patterning signals that allow you to figure something out. That typically happens during our days at specific times. This is why offices have high production periods and really low production periods.
Yeah.
When people are hungry and it's lunchtime, nothing gets done.
No.
When it's 9 a.m. and everyone's emails going off because nothing gets done. Nothing gets done from my accounting background. Nothing gets done between 8 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the day. 8 o'clock in the morning to about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, zero gets done. It's everyone reacting to all sorts of nonsense and then they do something. That's at least my personal experience. But does that make sense for flow states then?
Yes. And I am in my head still trying to figure out which book I read that talked about flow states so much. And I will come back to you in a week when I think about it.
Totally fair.
I have to like go on my Goodreads and see what I like wrote as my reviews.
So as a kind of a summation, what would you now define meditation as?
Okay. Let's see. Give me a minute. I would define meditation as the ability to control your breathing for a defined purpose, which is unique to each person.
That would be a good way to define each individual's meditative practice. Yes. I like that. Let's go one step further. How would you define your meditation? The meditation of Cassie.
I would say that the meditation of Cassie, and you will not find this surprising, Phil, involves necessary quiet, and the ability to, I think this is just going to be word vomit. So here we go. So there has to be quiet. Like I am at my best ability to focus and quiet, like, and control my breathing and other things when I am able to make quiet. It doesn't have to be a silent room, but I have to be able to block out the unnecessary things that are happening around me. And that could be because of an emergency that I need to be able to do it, or preferably just because they are constants that just exist. So I can block out the dog barking. I can block out the buzz of the microwave or whatever it is. I can just block out the things that don't matter. So that I can spend time centering myself before the start of the day. So for me, I think my meditative practice needs to happen in the morning, so that way I feel I can be as successful and centered in my day moving forward and be my best self. Because if I start my day without that, then I feel off kilter all day. And it could be just from walking down to the bus stop, I'm just like taking in too much stimulation and I just feel overwhelmed just doing that simple act. Or it could be trying to juggle a lot of things at work. I will just feel off kilter all day long if I don't take that time for that meditative practice in the morning, which for me, I've never thought of it as meditation before today. I've always just thought of it as like that little bit of quiet time I need before the house wakes up, right? Like I've just always thought of it as like the time I need before the house wakes up. But now in talking through this, I realize it's like, I do some meditation. I could be a little bit more intentional with it for sure. And so that's something I will work on. But the meditation practice and the mindfulness that goes along with that, I think is what that sets me up for success each day. And I'm sure other people, they need that at the end of the day as a reflective piece. But for me, it's a morning thing.
So let's do what I love to do with everything, which is use alchemical processes to break down the intrinsic principles. Or in this sense, the principle of meditation is just being awareness of breath, but we'll use it as a conceptual level. So in alchemy, we square the circle. So your circle was very neatly defined there, but we need 3 pieces for the triangle. So this is how I used to teach meditation. I'm cheating right now. The 3 pieces of the triangle that make up the uniform area in which the square of meditation can exist inside of that circle of everything: set and setting, intention, and awareness of breath. Once those 3 things come together, you are now in your meditative practice.
Yeah.
But you have to define what those are for yourself. You've clearly just done so. You need a nice quiet place, morning, maybe a cup of tea, right? Set and setting. That set and setting can travel with you on vacation. Right?
Absolutely.
That's the most important part there. Like, what do I need personally, or what do you need personally to go do that practice anywhere at any time, right? If you're at the hustle and bustle of the middle of your day, well, how do you get that 2 minutes you need? I'm going to go lock myself in the closet, set and setting.
Yeah.
Grab a Snickers bar. No, don't grab it's all poison. Grab a nice good protein bar or something. But that's the set and setting piece. Okay, we have that. Then it needs an intention. This is the part where you've admitted that you're maybe a little bit lacking in, right?
Yep.
So what would be some of the, you don't have to get too personal with it, but what are some of the things that you might now intentionally use there?
For the intention piece?
Yeah. It's a tough one.
It is a tough one. I'm going to need a minute.
That's fine. The intention piece, I'll give you, this is kind of how I used to teach it. The intention is what we the necessary outcome is not the target. Do not do that to yourself. Do not make intention the necessary target. You'll get what you need, not what you want. An intention should be a plausible outcome that you can use that time to work towards. That would be the intention. Because if you don't get there, you'll feel failure.
So when you meditate and when you do Tai Chi, what is your intention?
My intention for most of my Tai Chi practice is to take care of myself, to take time for myself, to work on my mobility and flexibility. But it changes because the form is so long usually. It changes as I go through. I might get partially through and be like, oh man, my quadricep is a little bit off today. Or I might be halfway through and be like, I'm going way too fast. Maybe I'm rushing today. I might also, it's like a check-in. For me, Tai Chi has always been the rest of the world doesn't exist right now. And this is my time when I'm doing it for myself. When I'm teaching Tai Chi, it's much different. Then the intention changes to, how do I get this person to learn Tai Chi, even though I'm now doing my Tai Chi? Master Fusco, who trained me, he used to totally check out sometimes in like the middle of Qigong. We'd be like halfway through class and the black belts be sitting there and we'd be like, I guess we have to keep going, because he is just like focused somewhere else.
Yeah.
So the intention leads the expectations. I guess I should put it that way. My expectations for my Tai Chi practice are to take time for myself to do a health practice. I leave it as simple as that.
Yeah.
What happens during the moment then isn't a failure if it goes off on like some weird tangent about how I dropped my water bottle on the way out of the door and then forgot something in the keys and I had to go back, and maybe that was a qualia moment that I missed that traffic jam, or that one person that was going to pull out in front of me in traffic and ruin my day. Like, I might ponder through all of that. I might also do the normal thing. Like, okay, I got to get this book done. I'm working on a PA apprenticeship thing. Like, what clients do I have today? I might do that too. It just depends. But the intention should never supersede what's plausible, and should be a little bit, let's say, I'm blanking on words right now. Something that is not on rails. Does that make sense?
I think so.
So I'm also being specifically vague here because
you don't want to give me an answer.
I don't want to give you an answer, but there's also some pieces that I'm hoping you struggle with right now because it's going to help people with the next piece we're going to add in.
Yeah. So for me, I think in hearing all of that from you, for me, the intention that I have, so we have my set and my setting, right? Like I need that quieter space. I love that cup of tea. The intention for me is as basic as taking a few moments to myself before the start of a day.
That's a great one. It's super simple. It can be hyper-focused. It can be pretty broad. That's actually like a really solid one because it's for you. It's time for you. It helps you.
I got an A.
You got an A. The intention piece needs to be defined.
Yeah.
Is kind of that's the hardest part. It needs to be defined going in. And this is where they say clear your mind.
I miss that so much because that's never talked about in the other meditation pieces. They focus on clearing your mind, but for what purpose are you doing that? And I think that's where I missed it. I was like, I'm clearing my mind, and if I don't clear my mind, I failed, right? And so I think that was the barrier. Was I didn't know that you should set an intention for why you are doing this, right? It is the why.
Good. That's the spiritual side. If you ask a why question. The reason, in my personal opinion, I can't really back this up with too much study, that this came about is because of the old cultivation methods are a system that you have to work inside of that they've tried to modify for the Western world. Again, I know I harp on yoga. I do love yoga. I think it's great for people. I just prefer Tai Chi because it's moving. When Tai Chi is practiced, it is a full system of intention. It has both a martial system, kicking, striking, grappling, and defending. It has a health practice, mobility, flexibility, as well as increasing the lymphatic system and immune functions. It has a mental practice of some sort of spiritual cultivation that connects the two. It's a full system. It puts everything together, the mind, body, and the spirit. Not that yoga can't do that or anything can't do that. There was that built into the system predetermined. So you can't practice Tai Chi without eventually learning those things if someone's teaching you correctly. In the Western systems, we've modified that and taken away the original intention. You would have sought out a Tai Chi or Qigong master having that intention in mind already, and that would have followed you through your entire practice. That's what mine does. Every day I try to get better at my Tai Chi and my Qigong because it's a self-improvement method. It's my cultivation method for my Qi as well, to get really personal about it. So like I was alluding away from, that's my true intention, is to build my Qi and improve myself. What I do with that practice, that's up to me, and that's all on me. When we set the intention ahead of time, it's typically when we sought out the thing that we went to learn. We don't do that nowadays.
No.
We don't have that in our society nowadays. Kids, even with sports, there's no intention to go learn something that's going to better you, to give you a skill. It's to get into college, or
it's for the scholarship.
It's the scholarship, or because you need to go be active, or even when people get their gym membership, or there's not a lot of intention behind that. It's a failure in our society, I would say. Barring that long conversation,
maybe there's not a lot of intrinsic intention, right?
Fair.
Like I think a lot of times people will get the gym membership, just use that example, because they want to look better, right? Like they want to feel better in their bodies, or they feel like there is an image that they need to
Middle piece, right?
right? Like there's just something that they're trying to achieve that might not be for them. It's for a reality that they've set upon themselves, perhaps.
Yeah. No one's given them a real goal,
Mm-mm.
right? And they don't have a real starting point. So they pick the middle piece. Oh,
Yep.
I go to a gym
Yep.
and I work out.
There we go.
That's not how it works. So because we lack that intention structure to go learn a practice, specifically something like meditation, we've already corrupted that into mindfulness and all these like, look, transcendental meditation works for a lot of people. It can also be a little culty and, it doesn't work for everybody. So you seek out the systems that's going to work for you and then learn it and practice it and then make it your own. That's the process of mastery. But if you don't have the intention set, you can't accomplish anything. So when you have your set and setting, then you have to give your intention. That statement of clear your mind is them setting you up for the intention because they're lacking the piece that they stole. They stole a piece they didn't even know they stole, but they're lacking it because they didn't actually steal it. In all of the cultivation methods, there is an underlying spiritual practice that's based on an energy structure, ki, chi, prana, or a philosophical endeavor. Intention at an educational level, high educational level, which is why I think we do a lot of schooling and not education, there's no intention for philosophical advancement. And philosophical advancement is self-betterment. All my studies of philosophy would say that's true. It's understanding the human complex system or the condition of being human, which I would say is a spiritual practice. So that was done in Buddhism with the Mahayana Vishnahana, the set of koans, the set of books. The same thing can be said, I don't want to step on anybody's toes here, of religious doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
This is why prayer is a meditation, because the intention is to understand the doctrine. And so, all the Mansies work this way. It gets, we can go really far down that rabbit hole, but that is the necessity for the intention. And a lot of times people don't have the intention. And so those practices try to give you that space to make it. When you don't have that, then you're stuck in that. How do I clear?
What am I doing here?
The clearing your mind part is to figure out what do you want to be doing with this time right now?
Yeah.
So sorry, that was a long one.
Okay. So we've got 2 points of the triangle.
You have
So we've
set and
got
setting.
set and setting. We've got our intention.
Yep. Tension's at the top of the triangle.
Okay.
Yep.
Set and setting, intention, and
The last piece is the awareness of the breathing. Okay. So that's the actual action. I can have a set and setting and I can have an intention, but if I don't do the action,
you're just sitting in a room.
I'm just sitting in a room. It's a nice room. Cup of coffee is probably great.
Great.
But the practice isn't actually happening. This is in the Tai Chi diagram, the point in time where we go from Wu Chi to Tai Chi. Tai Chi is the commencement of the action. I've now had the intention to perform Tai Chi. The Wu Chi diagram is a circle that's made of dashed lines. And then there's a circle that's completely whole.
Okay.
And then there's a circle with a dot in the center of it. It goes on further than that to the yin yang symbol. That Wu Chi is everything that existed before. Tai Chi happens when that center dot happens. That's the point of commencement. It was when I decided to move.
And acted on that.
But the circle solidifying, that point, right? It's like a small moment. It is the actual moment. I decided to go from being Wu Chi, that existed before, to doing Tai Chi. My intention was to perform Tai Chi. I might not actually do the form at that point. I might just sit in the Tai Chi posture or do Qigong or something like that, but I had the intention to do it. And that's where you go set and setting intention, and then we have the action. So without the action, it's not meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have the triangle. Now we have to make the square. Can you guess how that works?
I can guess that you're going to make me answer a lot more questions.
Yeah, just a couple, just a few. Because I want people to see how you can do this for yourself, and you're doing great. When we square a circle, we're looking for the coordinate plane in which the radius is defined by. So we have the triangle and then we put the square, and that gives us, it's the squares in the center of the circle. To make that a little bit more esoteric, which was the whole point of it, is the circle is the outside world. The triangle is the thing that separates you from the outside world so that you can have your own personal space. This is the methods of cultivation. It's also what's known as internal alchemy. Alchemy is not just the process of trying to turn lead into gold. It's a whole mental process that we've lost through ancient texts of cultivating mind-body awareness and also spiritual awareness. So what does your square look like? Remember, circle, the rest of the world. Triangle is the act of meditation, your meditation practice that separates you from that. What's the square?
And the square is the square the mindfulness approach?
That's a corner of the room.
Corner of the square. Okay.
It's hard,
give
right?
me a hint. Yeah.
So the square, using myself as an example, is everything I do during that Tai Chi practice.
Okay.
It also is everything I do with my clients when I work on them. It's my intuition, it's my instinct, it's my my spiritual senses, whatever they might be telling me. It's anything I'm filling that space with. Right? So really, it's self.
Yeah.
And this is all a trick. Squaring the circle means living in the moment.
Yep. I was getting that. As you were saying it, I was like, wait a minute. Okay. And so it's whatever I choose to do with that intention.
Yes.
At that point, at that moment, in that point in the circle.
You have created yourself space we have the circle, outside world, triangle, which defends us from the circles essentially, and brings that outside circle down into a square. And that square is your space. Whatever you do with it is yours as long as you've now created a set and setting, created an intention, which made it for yourself, and then
breathe,
acted upon it.
Yep.
Now you get to fill this space with whatever you want to fill. You want to put fluffy chairs and Berber shag carpet in, sure, have fun. If you want to, go sit on a mountain and have that beautiful vista, or if you're like the crazy dude I used to work with and you like to get shot out in other countries and protect people, that's what he did with it.
Yeah.
That was Biz's entire life. This is how we take, or if you're Dr. Fong, who taught me traditional Chinese medicine, and you spent literally every day of your life like doing acupuncture and herbal medicine and like just never ending, or handing kids lollipops because he just loved kids for some reason. Like he would just like run through like the front of not run through, but he'd shuffle through the crowd that was kind of waiting for him. And if a kid was crying, he'd be like, everybody go away. Just like, go away. I did not inherit that from him. Or if you were my Master Fusco, who trained me, he did most of my Tai Chi training at the higher levels. His was having a small little martial arts studio that his family and him lived in, essentially. Like they were there all the time. They were always around, and he did bodywork, and he did all these things together. He carved out his own little space in the world for himself.
Yeah. That's
how meditation goes from this thing we put on a shelf as this amazing, I'm going to be so peaceful and enlightened. That's nonsense. I'm going to live my life.
You got to act on those intentions.
Yeah. So can you meditate?
Yes. And I do it more than I think.
Yeah. So knowing all that, how would you sum that up for yourself?
I would say that you didn't give me these questions in advance, so I'm going to go with it. All right. So the circle can be chaotic. And so finding that triangle time for me is really important. So getting my set and setting, breathing, or working through whatever practice to center myself and be in control of my body and my mind at that point in time is important. And setting that intention. So that way in my daily life, in my square, can live the life that I want for myself and for my family and the people around me, right? And so that I am able to be intentional in the decisions that I make, that they reflect my reality and my values and my morals and ethics, and that I am, I think, able to see the things that are in congruence with that, and more easily able to pinpoint and quickly identify the things that are not.
I would say that is being self-aware. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if you've gotten to this chapter in the book, as she's currently editing. Unfortunately, she's under the stress of currently editing something random, a proverbial guide on self-awareness and mental health. But in the book, I define the use of self-awareness, self being the 3 health bodies, and awareness being a set of questions. This will make it all make sense, hopefully, if I'm good at my job. There's 2 questions using the word intention that define being aware of yourself. What are your intentions towards yourself? And what are your intentions for yourself? That's the square.
Yeah.
And that's living in the moment and living the life you want to live for yourself by being a self-aware individual who's practicing that as an option of agency.
Well, and if I'm going to be generous to myself, which I often am not, but if I am going to be generous to myself, so the moments in my life when I am living my truth and in finding that I am in connection with myself and with my family and everything is in alignment, it's because I am living my intentions.
Yeah, so
and I do that more often than not, thankfully, because I'm purposeful about it. But I don't, I think, maybe recognize it for what it is. And I don't give myself perhaps the credit, not to say like, oh, good job, Cassie, but like there are so many outside pressures and people telling you what you should do or how you should be or, you know, what your next step might want. Like, here's what I would do if I were you, like, but they're not me.
That means one of the triangle pieces is weakening.
But if I'm able to push those away, then that means I'm doing better in my square.
Exactly. It works. So part of alchemy is as above, so below. I can put another circle inside that square. And then I can triangle that, and I can square that. It just keeps on going.
Gonna mess with me.
That's the whole point of the process is you can just keep squaring circles all the way down because a circle goes inside of a square. That's the whole point.
Yep.
When one of those pieces isn't working the way it's supposed to, you get that force feedback you just described. And that gets into a whole level deeper, but that's where it's a self-referential equation. Intentions for and toward yourself. If they don't line up, there is a massive issue in the system. We typically find this in melancholy and, you know, clinical statements as far as health issues.
Yeah.
Be it physical, mental, or spiritual. So that intention question, which is a key piece of creating that triangle space that protects you from the rest of the world so that you can have your square, is why it's the top point of the triangle. But if the set and setting is lacking, right? If you're letting the house get a little too messy, if you're, you know, and you try to set that set and setting in the morning, but all of a sudden like chaos erupts, and although I like chaos, but like my definition of chaos, but things erupt that take away that set and setting, or if it's the winter and winter depression sets in because the set and setting has now changed and you're not a fan of it because you look outside and you're like, oh, it's cold and gross. Set and setting, the environment is a piece of that triangle, and people let that waver more than others. The other one is the being aware of your breathing and not doing the action. I would, no offense, I would say this is your biggest issue.
It's not doing that action.
Yes.
Absolutely.
When that action stops happening, you lose that momentary living in the moment, creating your square and having your life. Would you agree to that?
I absolutely agree to it because I can set up intention and set and setting, no problem, because those are very logical things that I'm able to do. But the breathing requires me to think through me and focus on me. I've always hated that. There's a whole backstory there. We don't need to get into it today. But that has always been my struggle, is being able...
That's known as a circle inside the square, by the way.
Oh, lovely.
That's how that keeps working.
Yeah, because that has always been my struggle, has been being able to then feel okay focusing on me. 5 minutes, 50 minutes. It has taken me 40-some years to put myself in situations where it's okay for me to be first sometimes. And so to stop and to think about, okay, how am I breathing? What am I doing? That's a very... Cassie's focusing on Cassie. And that's not something that I felt comfortable with for a very long time. And I would always push away. So that is, you are absolutely right. That is the hardest part of the triangle for me.
So when I talk about circles inside of squares and we go down that rabbit hole, and we won't go too far with this because this is a lot of self-work that people have to do for this. in alchemy, that is when the matrice of the corner has collapsed. And so that outside circle pushes in.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have an ellipsis. You can't square an ellipsis. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
We have an obtuse triangle. It's not, it just doesn't work. The whole thing collapses in. And so that's why the boundary of the original circle is actually super important.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding as above, so below. So inside of your square, if one side of the room is lacking in some way, I guarantee outside of that as well is lacking. And this is where society can be a gigantic force on people, right? If every day you have to get up and go to a job you hate, if every day you have to like deal with, in my past, family members who were just not good to be around, these are the things where you have to go find mental outlets or professional help to, build that outside circle, redefine it so that you can square it.
Yeah.
So I commonly, if you go down the rabbit hole of meditation, you're going to find some things that you probably don't want to deal with. Go seek out professional help. Like that's my usual, what I tell people there. But in just the basic practice, oh, what can I do in my daily process? That's really what you have to figure out is, okay, like set setting, intention, do the action, make up the square. I want to get your final viewpoint on all this, but this is the question I used to get asked all the time in martial arts because it was part of our progression. And I chewed on this thing for my entire martial arts career until I got my black belt. Probably up until I got my second degree black belt. I was like, you know what? I'm done with this.
No more.
My teacher, Ian, used to say, when you bring me a corner of the room, I'll give you another corner. Every time. I'd bring him a new form. I'd teach a new class. I'd get another belt. I'd go do something outside. Part of my martial arts training, we had to do, I was the Shaolin tradition. So I had to pick a medical discipline, which was Tui Na at the time. And then I got my massage license and became a body worker. That was part of my original black belt. If I didn't do that, I would have never gotten my black belt. He would have never given it to me. He, at that point in time, literally was like, oh, cool, another room. And I was like, what do you mean by that? Another room? He's like, oh, well, you gave me enough corners to make a room. Now you get to go do another one.
Yeah.
He's like, now you get to build a house.
That's where I was going to go with it. So, not to ruin your book here, but which I'm not going to do, but
no, feel free. It's a long book.
No, but I mean, you bring in this house metaphor at a couple pieces in the book, and I think you can bring it in a couple more times because we can build it.
Sure.
But it is just that idea of your foundation and building the structure of this house. But like you just said, like you have these different experiences, you're doing these different things, you're accomplishing these different things, you're building your self-awareness in different ways, and every time you build, I think, a little bit more self-awareness or kind of expose or explore a different piece of yourself, that's building a different corner of a room. And that leads to another room, another hallway, another door, another window. Like there is always, I think part of the wonder of the human condition is that there is always more to explore. And I don't think anyone ever fully finishes exploring themselves or knowing themselves because you're constantly growing and changing. And so I think that's an important piece to remember, and to recognize that like what works for you now is fantastic. You figured out what works for you now, but that doesn't mean it's always going to work for you. And so my triangle I have in my head, like, okay, I know how to work with my triangle tomorrow morning. In 10 years, that's not going to be my triangle. Right? Like life will change, and being okay with that, but still remaining true to my foundation and my intentions, I think is the important piece of being able to kind of work through that and to grow with it.
And that's the room inside the room inside the room that Ian used to talk about all the time. And the worst part about it, I'm just going to give everybody the secret because I'm just so tired of having to deal with this one. Every time you bring back a corner of a room, you're just making a circle. If you define a corner and you need another corner, so now let's say we have 6 and we have a hexagon and then we have an octagon. Mm-hmm. Eventually
you get to your circle.
You get to another circle and then you create another room inside of that.
Yep.
And that whole thing is to say, Meditation, for me personally, this is how I think about it, because I was trying not to allude to this earlier because I've already defined this quite a bit for myself. Meditation for me is either the training hall or the writing desk in the room. That room is buried quite a far down. It took me a long time to establish that room for myself in, what would be considered the house, the metaphor. But it's a three-dimensional kind of layering. My meditation, like my square, is either the writing desk or the training hall. That's it. I don't meditate anywhere else. As much as I would want to say, like, yeah, everything is a meditation for me. No. When I'm out in public, I'm super antisocial, and my security background, I'm always watching, and like, that's a professional nuanced thing. It's not a meditation for me, because my intention is for the meditation to be for myself.
Yes. And
so, yeah, I say, thinking about the room now, I mean, if I want to get all, kind of not even want emotional about it all, that was sitting in Dr. Fung's waiting room where he used to make me do Tuina. Like that was, and like watching him walk out, and like that was that moment. Or it was sitting and just talking with Ian, like who was a father figure for me at the time, because I had a bunch of problems there. And so that was the training hall. Then later I actually got to start writing and like feel like I was doing well at that. And then it became the writing desk. Like, oh, okay. And the writing desk is more than that. It's like on my office desk. Like, okay, I'm here to get done.
Yeah.
And so those two pieces are my meditation. But that's in the room.
Yeah.
I still have to like manage the room is kind of how I think about it.
Yeah. That resonates a lot. I think that's helpful.
Is there anything you would like to say in summation?
No, I think, so for me, this was really helpful because I think,
yeah, you could just go like, what did you learn?
Yeah, no, for me, this was really helpful because I think there's a lot of times where, my knowledge of something is limited just because I haven't explored it enough. And frankly, sometimes there's just some things that I like to dialogue about more than just go and read about it, because I think having a dialogue about it makes me think about things in a different way. And so for me, this was a topic that I was like, yeah, okay, I could read about this, but I want a dialogue, right? I want to understand. I want to get a different perspective. I want to see how that relates to my own experience and what I'm understanding. So for me, this was really helpful because you made me realize I'm perhaps doing something more and different than what I actually thought I was doing. But it also illuminated areas in which I need to be more intentional and thoughtful in my day-to-day, which is great.
That's fair. I'm thankful that you were willing to let me engage with all that. And I think your experience there will resonate with a lot of people. I think a lot of people, when they see meditation, they have the same issues as far as like, what is all this?
Yeah.
So again, awareness of breath, mindfulness is what you do with it. But if you want to get rid of all that nonsense speak, just boil it down to there's a circle. That's the outside world. Create your set and setting. And honestly, this works for psychedelics too, but take it out on your own risk. That's where I got some of this from. My trip through psilocybin, but set and setting, intentions, and then the action thereof. Then you define the square, which is the rooms, and you can go as deep as you want, or you can just leave it base level and just have a nice morning and call it a day.
Yeah.
So any questions on any of that?
Thanks, Phil.
Questions, comments, or concerns, as I always say. I always have to mention we are an affiliate with purebulk.com if you're looking for any supplementations, specifically L-theanine, which can help you get into that flow state, commonly taken with coffee to help the jitters of caffeine. You can check out purebulk.com and use Stoic Bodywork 15 for 15% off your first order, or Stoic Bodywork for 10% any orders after that. Yeah, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thank you and take care.